If you've ever been in a toxic relationship, you'll know that it can be really traumatizing, but how it actually traumatizes your internal world is surprising. Because if you've only ever had unhealthy relationships from childhood, your standard for a relationship is really low and you don't walk away when things are getting worse and worse. Because the love and connection you have for them causes you to stay, along with a series of deeper wounds. But if you stay too long in an unhealthy or toxic relationship, your internal world gets messed up. You start to question your sense of self, what is and isn't okay, your self-worth and identity can get completely broken. And today I'm going to unpack exactly how your internal world actually fragments, and you can feel like you're this Jekyll and Hyde on the inside. So I'll unpack this fragmenting effect today, and make sure you stick around to the end because I'm going to show you how to pick up the pieces and heal. If you're new to this channel, welcome. My name is Amy and I help women who are sick of being stuck in a cycle of attracting toxic relationships, and I help them to move forward by healing their relationship to themselves and their core wounds in their body so they can be confident and feel free on their own and show up in their romantic relationships as their true authentic self. And if this sounds like you, please subscribe to my channel, click the bell so you get notified, because I am posting new lessons like this every week. Before we begin, I invite you to download the PDF guide for this lesson. Just type guide in the comments below and I'll send you the link. And if you want to know more about how you can work directly with me in Heal Your Heart School, stick around to the end of this lesson. Now, firstly, when you're in either an unhealthy or toxic relationship where your needs aren't being met, you are being lied to, cheated on, gaslit, all of these toxic behaviors, let's firstly unpack the physiological and behavioral effects on you as the person who's on the receiving end. When you're chronically lied to or manipulated, your sense of trust with others is affected, right? You just lose your ability to trust what people are saying when the person closest to you is doing that. Your anxiety increases, your nervous system becomes in overdrive. And if that person's gaslighting you, you start to question your reality and your own intuition and senses. So you start to gaslight yourself as well. You start to internalize what they're saying to you and you start to think of yourself in the same way as the way that they're telling you. If you've been cheated on, or if you suspect you've been cheated on, you go into this state where you keep scanning for more proof of what you suspect has gone on or what has actually gone on. You start to check his phone, you start to look in his pockets, and you start to scan for more evidence that this behavior is happening. So the actual effects on the body of these kinds of behaviors are devastating, right? Anxiety, nervous system is in overdrive, lack of sleep, chronic stress, low energy, no appetite, and you're constantly distracted, right? Your whole life is suffering because of this. Now, if you're in a vacuum, if you're on your own, these behaviors and these physiological effects wouldn't exist, or they would exist a lot less. So the question is, why would you stay in a relationship where A, this is happening to you, and B, this is this new state of being that you're in? I've been here and I know what different types of unhealthy and toxic relationships can do to actually pull you off your center, where you look at someone else and you think, gosh, I'd never stay in it, but you actually find yourself staying in something similar. And I liken it to the frog in the pot of lukewarm water, right? So the frog jumps into the pot, and at the moment, there's nothing particularly bad happening in the relationship. Maybe the water's just lukewarm. And then things get worse and worse so slowly and so incrementally that all of a sudden you are staying in a pot of boiling water and you don't actually even see how bad it is around you. And the whole time you're staying in it because you've got this connection with him, you love him, you believe in the relationship and you fight for it, and you've invested so much time in it. Because of this, your tolerance gets bigger and bigger. And all of a sudden you've reached this point of no return where you do anything to keep it together. And part of you, a deeper subconscious part of you, is actually attached to this person and can't let go. I talk about that part of you in this video on the abandonment wound, which I want you to watch if this is you. This is a part of you, a fragmented part of you that believes that he is the only one who can love you, or he is the only one that will ever give you the love in the way that you deserve. This is one part of you, a fragmented part of you that on some level believes this person is the only one that can love you or is who you're only worthy of. This is a very young, naive, scared part within us that has literally latched onto him, and there's very little you can consciously do in order to unlatch. And if you stay in that relationship and things get worse and worse in that pot of boiling water, just starts to boil over, you're in what's called a trauma bond, which is where you've bonded with that person through a familiar imprint of trauma in your body that your current relationship with him is actually replicating. I have more information on what that is in this video here, but effectively it's a subconscious part of you that's fighting for the relationship with him, when in fact that little subconscious part, the wounded inner child, believes that in fighting for that relationship with your current partner, you're going to somehow heal the youngest, earliest relationships you had, probably with your primary caregivers, that were also unhealthy or toxic. And in healing it in this adult form, you'll somehow heal this younger part of you. Now, this young, naive part can get completely out of control. You might find yourself latching onto emotionally unavailable or unhealthy types of partners way before you even know who they are. Sometimes you might not have even met them and you latch onto them and you have more of a limerent connection with them. But if this part of you is in control, you are effectively in the point of no return with this connection. You're out of control and you can't leave, even though you consciously understand what's going on is completely unhealthy and toxic. Now, I'll be going through several points today in the lesson. Rather than taking notes, I just want you to download the guide for this lesson in PDF form, type guide in the comments below, and I'll send you the link. Because when we force ourselves to stay in a relationship because of this younger, naive part that is permanently bonded to this person, we actually cause ourselves further trauma, further internal fragmentation. And these are the internal psychological effects of staying in an unhealthy and toxic relationship, which is what I want to unpack deeply in this video. So relationships themselves are mirrors, right? The way that you see yourself is reflected in the way that the other person sees you. We get to know ourselves through the mirror of others, which is why our earliest relationships often form our identity. And if we have secure, strong relationships with our primary caregivers where we feel safe to express and feel emotions, we develop this strong internal sense of self-esteem and self-worth that then translates into adulthood, where we know what is and isn't right for us, and we can walk away and leave a situation that's unhealthy. But if we didn't get that kind of mirroring when we were children, if our parents were either physically absent largely, or if they were even emotionally absent enough of the time, or somehow neglectful that they were themselves perhaps dysregulated enough that they couldn't help us self-soothe and feel safe in our body, we don't develop this internal sense of self-esteem and self-identity that matures. What happens instead is parts of us get frozen at a developmental age, and we feel insecure and anxious in ourselves when we're in relationship with others. So we carry into adulthood this low self-esteem and low self-worth. And because as a child we experienced this kind of unhealthy dynamic where we were made to feel like we were wrong, or our emotions were wrong or bad, we actually think there's something wrong with us and we kind of need to take whatever we'll get. So in adulthood, we actually think on some level that the kind of treatment we're getting from this person is all we're worthy of, or all we'll ever get. But this is just the young, naive, wounded inner part of us that is in control at the moment, right? Her sticky hands are on the steering wheel. Her voice is the loudest inside. And that's why you're feeling incredibly insecure, and you can actually act out in very childish and immature ways sometimes when your partner isn't behaving and acting the way you want them to. So this is effectively what's going on in terms of internal fragmentation. This young, naive inner part is in us, and it is the main voice that's speaking in our head. In fact, you probably can't distinguish between your higher self and this self at the moment if what I've been saying is resonating with you. We're letting this younger version of ourselves make our relationship choices, and letting this younger version of ourselves gaslight us into staying with this person and thinking what they're doing isn't bad, or it's, you know, it could be so much worse, right? There's this internal dialogue that is very young, very naive. There's no discernment. There's no mature, logical thinking in there. It's very much based on impulse, on emotion, on getting her instant needs met. So the higher adult, mature internal part of you is quite quiet at the moment. There might be a part of you that's thinking, wow, this really isn't good. Like, I know that I really need to leave him, or whatever that is. Like, it's a really distant voice, but that's the mature adult self within you that at the moment you're not listening to, because this other younger part of you is in control. And to be totally frank, when I left the most excruciatingly toxic relationship I've ever been in, my younger self was so strong that I needed therapy and help to get out of it, right? I just didn't have the internal capacity and confidence to listen to that mature, more wise version of me. I needed to have my hand held effectively by someone else who was a voice of reason. So inside of you, you've got a very loud, wounded inner child. You've got a very small higher self that is trying to speak reason into you, but you're just not listening because the inner child's little sticky hands are on the steering wheel and you're believing her words and beliefs, and you're actually sort of enmeshed with her. You don't see the distinction between her and you as a person. Adjacent to this loud voice is another very important part that plays in our internal self, and that is our inner critic. Now, our inner critic believes that the toxic relationship has happened because of you, because there's something you've done or something you are that is only worthy of this. And our inner critic speaks extremely harshly to us, criticizes everything about us, and actually interprets external events through the framework of you could have done better, or you should have done better, or you should love him more, or you should do this, right? All of those should kind of sentences. They call this self-referencing when there's trauma, and it's this internal part that turns on yourself, makes everything around you about you and about your fault. And this part can't actually believe that it's his fault that he's done it, right? This part also works closely in conjunction with another part where we have this inappropriate amount of compassion for this person who's doing these toxic things. We actually, have so much compassion for him that we see the little boy in him and can, really understand where he's coming from. He didn't mean it, right? That part of us works in conjunction with the inner critic to make this whole mess seem about ourselves. Now, there are other parts as well that we will be feeling. If you've ever done internal family systems or any kind of parts work, you'll understand from the level of the mind what these families are about. There is the inner protectors, there's the inner shame, which is this, I call it the shame monster. It's this deeply felt sense of shame that you've brought so much on yourself. It's kind of like the inner critic on overdrive. There's the firefighter part of you, which comes in to deal with the internal chaos by literally dousing the fire with water, which is you either disassociating, going into freeze, going into depression, or just engaging in addictive behaviors like watching too much Netflix or eating heaps of food or, smoking or drinking alcohol. Now, in this messy internal world of opposites, I remember feeling like I had a Jekyll and Hyde personality inside me. On one side, I would love him so deeply and I'd feel so compassionate for him, and all those parts that would just want to reach out to him and love him, like he was a child. Then I would flick to this other part of me that was so unbelievably angry towards him. Like I could just, I just wanted to. And it was this pent up kind of suppression of all the anger that I hadn't been feeling, because this younger, naive part of me that was just so overly loving and inappropriately compassionate for him was actually running the show. Now, I have people in my life that I see do this, and it absolutely breaks my heart, because what I see is there's this internal split inside them. It's like they're so compromised inside themselves that their light dims, they become less of who they are, because they're constantly compromising between this, extreme anger and this part of them that knows that they need to leave, but there's this other overly compassionate, loving part of them, this young, naive, scared, immature part of them that is running the show. And it's just heartbreaking to see this happen. So I want to dive into how we can actually heal from the effects of this internal fragmentation if you've ever forced yourself to stay in a toxic or unhealthy relationship for a period of time and you recognize that these internal parts or players are happening within you. Because interestingly, these actual internal parts originated when we first started to experience early complex trauma, which was times and moments with our primary caregivers and the people that raised us where they didn't fully see, hear, or understand or allow us to be in our body while we were experiencing emotion. we were overwhelmed by it and we didn't have any help around it. And so we experienced this kind of small trauma that builds up over time. These parts form internally inside of you in order to deal with this situation. So these parts actually came in to help you, to save you in a way from feeling the absolute, devastation of the fact that your caregivers were letting you down at that time. They protected you to make it seem as if you're actually okay, you're still connected to them, everything's fine. And that's why the self-referencing part happens. We turn it on ourselves, because if we were to believe that it was about our caregivers, that would destroy our sense of, being in the world, and we wouldn't be able to actually grow and develop. So when this becomes our blueprint of relating, that we form, this young naive part that just needs to get connection above all else, and the inner critic that's making it all about us, we learn to relate in all of our relationships in that way, right? Repeated unhealthy relationship patterns reinforce these internal parts. And ironically, we actually then attract the same kinds of the relationships in adulthood that reinforce these internal parts within us, because that's just how we've learnt to relate and attach and love. Now, I referred earlier to, parts work and the kind of talk therapy that works around parts, like internal family systems therapy. And that can be really helpful to understanding the meaning of why the parts exist, understand the origin story of each of those parts. But what I've discovered in my own healing journey and working with clients in Heal Your Heart School is that these parts actually primarily exist in the body, and there's no amount of talking or thinking or understanding about their origin that will actually heal the root of it, because they live energetically in the body. They each have their own sort of nervous system imprint on the body, so we've got to actually heal from there. And I have an entire video that unpacks the differences between those types of therapies and why bottom-up healing and what bottom-up healing is in this video that I'd love you to watch next. But let's actually get started with some steps so you can start to connect to the body's imprint of these parts and start to heal what's going on inside your body if you've experienced this kind of trauma. A body-based energy approach is actually needed in order to get to this state where our higher self, our mature adult, is in charge. She's the loudest part within us, and the other parts are smaller, right? They might pipe up every now and then, but the mature part of us knows and has kind of reparented those other parts and feels comfortable that the decision that she's making is going to be the best decision for all of the internal parts. So the first step is really what we've done in this video today, which is just becoming aware in the mind of when these parts are speaking. And the quickest and easiest way to do this is just to notice your internal chatter on a day-by-day basis. If you've had unhealthy or toxic relationships, you no doubt have a strong inner critic. And the quickest way of getting the inner critic's kind of dialogue out is just simply to write down what the regular phrases are that you're saying about yourself, particularly the ones that start with "you should," right? The word "you should" is a real indication that your inner critic is speaking. Write them out on a piece of paper and start to get a sense that you are separate from this version of yourself. You might go so far as to name this version of yourself, just to give yourself that internal separation. Now, our internal protectors or critical inner parts get louder when we're in a really vulnerable state. So if you are in a vulnerable state at the moment, if perhaps you've just broken up with someone, or you're trying to, or you're in a toxic relationship, or even if you've been on your healing journey for a while, you start dating again and these inner parts speak up, I want you to be really kind and compassionate with yourself. Don't blame yourself for having these parts, because remember, these parts actually form to keep you safe in childhood when you were young. They're actually incredibly intelligent mechanisms designed to allow you to develop and function, the way that you're functioning today. They obviously are hindering us now. They're keeping us in this really upended kind of internal state of turmoil. And now as adults, we have the capacity to heal these, and that's what we're doing. So step 2, once you've become aware in your mind of these different parts speaking, I want you then to notice when that particular part is speaking, drop into your body's awareness. How do you feel in your body when your inner critic is speaking? Notice as you allow your inner critic to speak, what part of the body lights up. Perhaps you might feel a constriction in your throat or tightness in your chest. Just notice those little body signals. They are actually the physical and energetic imprint of this kind of wounded part of you that's been repeated over and over again, and your body's actually holding on to this energetically. Now, if you do this and you feel comfortable enough, lean into this sensation. It might seem really counterintuitive because what we normally do when something uncomfortable comes up in the body is we run away from it. What I want you to do is to lean into it so that you can just allow this part to feel seen, heard, and understood, right? This is a developmentally young version of us, and she actually needs to have space now. She needs to be heard, seen, and understood. So this is your time to do it. Lean into this discomfort, and what will probably happen is you feel the need to cry, and allow yourself to drop into it and cry as much as you can, making sure that when you're crying, it actually feels like a release and you're not actually getting worse and worse. Don't go outside your window of tolerance, all right? Make sure that you stay safe in your body while you're doing this. It's really good to do this with a friend or with a coach or with a therapist as well. Once you've dropped into this and really allowed yourself to lean into the discomfort of the feeling in the body, keep tracking the feeling in the body. Often it does move quite a lot as we lean into it and work with it. The last step is to just love this part, flood this part with love. And this is a really nurturing kind of feeling of just saying to it, thank you for being here. I love you. You know, I appreciate you. I'll never leave you again. And it might also help to do some self-soothing, like a hold while you do this. And just stay with this feeling of just loving this young, scared part that has been, you know, there this whole time and hasn't felt loved or seen and understood, but you're doing this to it now. So you're actually in your higher self. You're reparenting this younger part while you do this. Now, over time, if you commit to this as a practice and as a discipline, you will notice these harsh, edgy, spiky parts start to soften. It's going to take some time because you might feel it's quite uncomfortable, but stick with it, and over time they will have less grip on you. Their voices inside you will be quieter, and the wiser adult part of you that is effectively in the driver's seat when you're doing these steps is in charge. She's stronger and she's louder. The other parts will then begin to trust the adult part, right? This is how we build self-trust and self-esteem internally. And this is what we call the process of reparenting. Now, if these steps make sense to you, I invite you to attend my webinar where I unpack the 3 steps to self-love from a broad perspective. I've unpacked a very, very small part of that. I go through the entire process in my webinar. You can join in the link below. I also have a Facebook group if you'd like to meet me. Join. We do lives every week. It'd be lovely to see you in there. And if you want to know more about how to work with me in Heal Your Heart School and actually go through these processes and learn the tools formally with me, I invite you to submit an application for a discovery call with me. Click the link. It will take you to a calendar and you can book a time on my calendar so we can speak, or a member of my team can speak with you there. If you have any questions about what I've unpacked today, please comment below. I will definitely be in the comments and be really interested to hear how you feel about it. And if you found this video helpful, please click the like button because it helps my channel out so much in the algorithm. And for now, here are some next step videos for you to watch so you can move one step closer to having a whole and healthy relationship with yourself. And for now, I will see you in the next video.